Can everybody hear me without the megaphone?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Now, I'm down here at immense personal expense today. I have raised from what is practically my deathbed, and like this is not just man flu, this is like man Ebola. So, the reason I'm down here is because it's obvious what's happening here. I think that the words that Norm was too polite to voice were class cleansing. Yeah? Now, this has been going on, to my knowledge, I mean, I wasn't around then, but to my knowledge, this has been going on since about 1918. At the end of the First World War, they started pulling this place down. And when I say this place, what I mean is the entire of Northampton. This was the whole of the town. When Alfred the Great, and he wasn't called Great for nothing, or because he'd got a lot of Twitter followers, he was called Alfred the Great because he was great. He said this was foremost amongst the shires. He said that Northampton, by which I mean the boroughs, was the capital of England. Now, look at us. Since the end of the First World War, they've been pulling this place down. I wonder why that was. I've been looking at some research onto that period recently, and I've noticed that something happened, didn't it, in 1917 in Russia. They had a bit of a revolution. And so when the troops came home in 1918, I think all across the Western world, governments were quite frightened at the idea of having a lot of disgruntled, disaffected, angry, working class people in big areas crammed in together. So they started breaking us up. Now this place where we're standing here, I remember this. When I was a kid, this was a nice little row of streets. There was, Bath Street and Moat Street and Fort Street. Moat Street and Fort Street, which is what came before Moat Place and Fort Place. Before that, there were moats and forts. My great-granddad used to live round in Fort Street. He lived there with me nan and her firstborn, little baby, apparently very beautiful, called Minnie. She lived to 18 months, and then the fever cart that they used to keep in Spring Lane, that came trundling along and into Fort Street to pick her up because she'd got diphtheria. We only had fever carts in the boroughs because, well, surprisingly, this was the only place we needed them. This was the only place where loads and loads of the kids were getting diphtheria. This place has been abused and neglected for 100 years, and long before that. And this is disgusting. I think that the people here, I can only reiterate something that I said in the paper in my rant column a few weeks ago when I said, isn't it about time that the people who govern us had to submit to competence and proficiency tests?
Yeah.
Now, there is absolutely no reason why they shouldn't. We all do. And if we do our jobs badly, we don't take an entire community down the toilet, do we?
We'll get the sack.
We'd get the sack. We wouldn't get the jobs in the first place. But I had a message from Brazil the other day. I had to fill in a questionnaire. And they were saying, "Dear Mr. Moore, how are you getting on with your request for competence and proficiency tests for government?" So this stuff goes a long way. And I had to tell them, well, I've got on about as well as you'd expect, because I've got absolutely no response to it, because I didn't expect one. There is no conceivable test that any of these useless condom failures could ever pass. And I don't even expect them to explain why they shouldn't take this test, although that would be funny. I just want to keep asking the question, because if they even admit that they have heard the question, they are doomed. So, I think we should all keep asking the question, because just like Michael Howard with Jeremy Paxman on Newsnight, the question gets funnier and funnier the more that you keep asking it. So, in the short term, anything that Norman Adams says is the best thing to do for this area, support him. And I will be at your back, assuming that I get over this life-threatening illness, and you're all keeping a very sensible distance from me, and I appreciate that. Well, and over to you, Tony.
Thank you, Alan.
Hey, Tony.
People often ask me what the secret of a happy life is, and I always say, never forget your roots, never forget where you come from. And you know, Alan, you know, you are absolutely personified in relation to that quote. You've never forgot where you come from. This is your area, these are your people, and you know, we're so grateful that you've spent time, continue to spend time speaking the truth. As you said, this is class cleansing.
Yeah.
And I had the pleasure and sometimes displeasure of serving this community for 6 years as a local councillor. Just a thought, where are our local councillors?
They're not here.
We have 4 local councillors in Castle Ward representing Spring Boroughs.
But
Not
it is
one.
the weekend, isn't it?
Not one. It's a weekend. It's a Saturday. In fact, they're all shopping somewhere. I don't know. Just as long as they're not going to Starbucks. They're not here. And when I was on the council, we used to discuss what was going to happen to the future of Spring Boroughs. And the press and some people have said to me when they knew I was coming here today, they said, "Oh well, Tony, you know, when all this is knocked down, they might build something nice." And I said to them, "Don't you get it? It's not about buildings, it's about people. It's about the rights of residents to be involved in their futures. It's about the rights of tenants to be told what's going on with their own homes." I hope that this is either refurbished to a high extent, or even if it's replaced, fine. But what about the rights of the people who lived here and have lived here for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, who have been cleared out just so that other people may reap the benefits of the council's largesse? Because as Norman said, this is a very attractive place to be at the moment. You only have to look around you. You see the community of the boroughs being encircled. You see houses and flats for sale at every point. And in the centre, in the heart of Spring Boroughs, the people who made the boroughs are being cleaned out. So I say to you this, do not trust this borough council. They lied to the people of Spring Boroughs. They came round and knocked on these doors. They said, "We want to carry out a survey. We want to know what you think. And we'll come back and tell you." Did they come back and tell us? No. They said to me when I was a councillor, they said, "We'll set up a local plan. We'll let the community engage with that local plan." And I said, "Do you mean it?" And they said, "Yes." I said, "Well, truth will be in the delivery." And what did they do? They ignored the Residents Association, they ignored the people's groups that were already set up, and they set up their own body. We placed people. They got the councillors to do their bidding, to get safe members of the community who would say what they wanted them to say. And they're still doing it. And now they have 4 puppet councillors who will do their work for them. The only answer lies in the people of this community standing up and speaking up for themselves. So next time they come round for your vote, unfortunately I shan't be standing here in May, so this isn't an election speech, but the next time they come round and ask for your vote, ignore the colour of the rosette, because red, green, yellow, it's all the bloody same, it's all merged into one. Ask them, what are you going to bloody do for me? What are you going to do yourself personally to make my life better? What are you going to do for the residents? What are you going to do to make sure we have our say? Until they do that, until we restore democracy, then I'm afraid that the council, the councillors, they're all useless to us. Take control of your own lives, make your own decisions, shout, make sure you're heard, because as Alan said and as Norman has said, the people of Spring Boroughs have been double crossed.
Yeah.
Did you all notice that I let Tone speak for more than 3 minutes? we didn't drag him off the bloody estate. You people give speakers the eye when you've had enough, because you all start nodding off. We can see when eyes start glazing. We know when it's time to go down the boozer, so...
Justin Brown.
Thanks everyone for coming along. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Norman. Thank you, Tony. Trust and confidence in any authority is absolutely essential. Somewhere buried there, in a shallow grave behind us, is trust and confidence in Northampton Borough Council. All join with me now and lament the memory of trust and confidence in Northampton Borough Council. Will we ever get it back?